Welcome to the Embracing Singleness podcast with your host, my sister, Elder Prophetess Shimika Bowers. The purpose of this podcast is to change the perception of being saved and single from being an obstacle to being a blessing, while embracing our singleness to help build functional relationships as Christ so desires. So again, let's welcome our host, Prophetess Shimika Bowers.
Welcome back to Embracing Singleness. As I discussed on the last podcast, what are soul ties? If you did not get to listen to the last podcast, please go back. Just stop this video and go back so that you understand what a soul tie is. So listen, this week we are going to cover how do soul ties form? How do they form? As I stated last week, that soul ties are an emotional and spiritual connection that we form with others through physical, emotional, spiritual intimacy. They are formed when two people become intimately involved in a way that is not healthy or godly. I did put the disclaimer out there that some soul ties can be positive, but negative soul ties are the most destructive. They can be formed through sexual relationship, emotional affairs, or in any kind of ungodly attachment. So let's dive into this just for a little bit. Again, if you want the full avenue of this topic, please make sure you're joining us on our Zooms on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month at 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. So how do soul ties form? Physically, listen, we're saved over here, but listen, soul ties are formed sexually. They are formed mentally. You can get emotionally tied up with someone, and spiritual intimacy. So let's cover physical. I know it's tabooed in the church and we don't talk about it, but we're going to talk about it here. Embracing singleness is real. So I'm not going to patty cake around it. A lot of times we end up in sexual relationships with someone who we are not supposed to be with. God did not ordain it. They are not our husband. We're in a generation of friends with benefits, booty calls. All of that is going to have you connected to someone that you are not meant to connect with. I know this generation is you only live once. There is no connection. There is no love involved. It's just a sexual act. I am here to tell you that is inaccurate. When you lay with a man or a woman, depending on what your preference is, when you lay with someone who God has not ordained for you to lay with, you pick up there's a transference of spirits. Have you ever dated someone and all of a sudden you don't know who you are? You're dealing with things that you've never dealt with before. I guarantee you that you have somehow connected with a soul tie, and it is causing you to behave and think and perceive in a manner that you are not used to perceiving in. You have to be very careful who you choose to interact with, who you choose to connect with on a spiritual level. Sex is just not sex. That is a trick of the enemy. That we and I think for me and my generation, it was just so tabooed. I know in our house, Lord, that was the one thing that my mom, rest her soul, she harped on a lot. So of course, the more we harp on it, our children does what? They go out and they do it. They go out and they experiment. So then they end up picking up spirits that they were not meant to carry. They were not meant to have possession of. They're not. It's just not what God ordained. So sex is just not sex. Sorry. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that sex doesn't feel good and sex is bad, and that it's not. If it is, I promise you, you're doing it wrong. So listen, you just have to choose. You have to choose that you want better for your life, that you want to be everything that God created you to be. And unfortunately, when we begin to have sex with people, it changes our perception of them. It changes our mindset. I used to say to myself and tell other people, stop having sex and see what you have in common. Stop having sex and see if you see them the exact same way. I guarantee you won't. Remove sex, and then that is the one of the first steps that you have to do to begin to break a toxic soul tie. Emotional. It doesn't have to be necessarily sex, but if someone is there for you emotionally, and you have now, instead of running to God, you run to them, and you think they have all of the answers. They stroke your ego when your ego needs to be stroked. They become your emotional support system to the point that you can't even think for yourself. You don't know how to respond. I used to have someone to call me and say, now tell me if I'm wrong. Well, if you got to call and ask, then you probably know that you are. But you can have an emotional soul tie where you are just connected to someone emotionally, where if they exit your life, or you think they're going to exit your life, you become erratic. Your emotions are all over the place. You don't know, oh, I love you one minute, I hate you the next, and then you're sad, and then you're mad, and then you're glad. You're just an emotional roller coaster. Toxic soul ties will do that for you. You also have to make sure that spiritually you are not so codependent on someone that you can't see your way through. You don't know how to get to God for yourself. You think this person is the only person that can get a prayer through. That is not accurate. And you need to be able to sever that. You need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. So listen, every one of these, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, it creates a deep emotional attachment that's just hard to let go of. So listen, I know we don't really think about spiritual connections being soul ties, but listen, when you are in cults or ungodly practices that goes against the word, you are now playing with your spirit. So again, these are just some ways that soul ties can be formed. So listen, be self-aware, understand how they are formed, so that you know that your internal GPS should be able to tell you that you're headed down a path that you are not meant to go. So this pretty much covers how soul ties are formed. So come back next week. We will discuss the effects of a negative soul tie. Like I said, if you want the full experience, please join us on the Facebook group Embracing Singleness CLT. And then jump on the Zooms. The Zoom is interactive. It's the second and fourth Monday of the month from 7:30 to 9. we actually converse with one another and we share our life stories. And sometimes if you're not ready to talk, you can simply listen. So listen, we're going to break these soul ties up. We're going to break them up. As I always say, after every podcast, after everything I do, and even in life, God is the greatest power and you are not defeated. Until next time, be blessed.
You have been listening to the Embracing Singleness podcast with Prophetess Shimika Bowers. We ask that you follow us on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube.